Sending a message, Americans casting ballots in races across the country today, each one with a local impact and the potential to tell us something about the national mood.
Plus, mixed messages. President Trump says no more food stamp benefits will be paid until the shutdown is over, despite two judges ruling that he has to pay those funds. The White House now insisting it is complying with the order. And later, a potential climate catastrophe. A new report says the world has failed to meet a critical target in the fight against global warming. We're following these major developing stories and many more, all coming in right here to CNN News Central. President Donald Trump right now facing his first big political test of his second term as it is election day across America. The president throughout the day has been airing grievances on several key races. Just moments ago, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt claimed that fraud was happening in California without actually providing any proof. Leavitt then saying the president is considering executive action without offering many details.
Yeah, we actually just spoke with a Republican who does not share that concern. One, Kevin Kiley, there on the corner of that graphic. Earlier, the president took aim at that state's Democratic-led redistricting push, calling it unconstitutional. And certainly there are concerns from Republicans about that. The fate of 5 Republican House seats on the ballot hanging really in the balance there. We are also keeping a close eye on key matchups in New York, New Jersey, and Virginia. And we have teams standing by in all of those places, including CNN's Omar Jimenez, who is in New York talking with voters. What are they saying, Omar?
Yeah, we're hearing a wide range of things. As you can imagine, a lot of enthusiasm around this race, of course, over potentially a new face in Zohran Mamdani versus a little bit more of the establishment in terms of Andrew Cuomo. But with that comes experience. And I say that because I've been speaking to Andrea Crawford here, who's a decades-long resident here in Queens, New York. And tell me, you voted for Andrew Cuomo. Why?
I voted for Andrew Cuomo because I needed operational experience in the mayor's office. I think it's been lacking in the last several terms. It's a huge city, huge budget. We have lots of issues. And I think he actually gets things done.
Were you excited to vote for Andrew Cuomo?
Not particularly.
And why is that?
Well, I think he has a lot of baggage. I would like to see fresh faces. But I want to see people with experience, who have executive experience, who have operational experience. And even if they're out of the Assembly or the Senate or the Council, that they've actually put out bills, worked legislation, and understand the process.
And just what issues were top of mind to you? I know the operational experience, but was it things like affordability, safety? Were there any issues top of mind?
Well, affordability and safety are part of living in the city. I have problems with the borough-based jails. I live in Kew Gardens, and I think that that could be handled better. I have issues with overall cost, but it can't be just one magic, wish. You need to know how to operate with people, how to work with people, how to manage agencies, who you're going to put in charge, and how do those agencies run. And without that knowledge and deep base, I don't know how anything can get done.
And for you, that's Andrew Cuomo?
For me, that's Andrew Cuomo.
All right, Andrea, great to meet you. As we've been talking about, we are in Queens. I was going to take you inside this polling center real fast. Well, as we go, I'll walk as I finish this up here. But as we've been talking to voters over the course of today, it's been pretty busy, obviously swelling as the workday sort of got started and then around lunchtime and things of that nature. But I'll just show you guys as I send it back to you, Brianna and Boris. But you can see how busy it is as we end up finishing up this workday here. And as enthusiasm that we've seen at least shatter records on Sunday as far as early voting numbers, we'll see if that holds pace.
All right, Omar, thank you for that. Busy there on that basketball court. So let's go down to Brian Todd. He's in Virginia. That is where the shutdown has really been playing politically. It's personally impacting a lot of voters, especially in the county where you are, Brian. Tell us what they're telling you.
Well, Brianna, a lot of them are very frustrated with the shutdown, and that is influencing their vote today. I'm going to get to that in just a moment because we have a voter who's going to talk to us about that. There are a lot of reasons that we love covering elections on days like today. One of them is that we can show you the process, for the most part, in person, live as it happens. And this has been a steady stream of voters coming into Arcola Elementary School. This is precinct 119. This is one of the busiest precincts in a very busy county for voting. Loudoun County has just exploded population-wise over the past several years. It is now the 4th largest county in the state of Virginia, and it's just been growing and growing and growing. It's been very smooth here. People get their ballots. They go old school here in Virginia with the paper ballots. They fill them in these stations here, and then they bring it over to this counter and feed the counter. Now, we're going to go outside and talk to a voter. We mentioned government shutdown, and the government shutdown has really affected, a lot of people here in Loudoun County. There are hundreds of thousands of people here who work for the government, or at least know someone who works for the government. This is Cheryl Swinson. She's been a resident of Loudoun County for about 13 years now. Cheryl, you said you just voted for Abigail Spanberger, but the government shutdown really weighing on your mind because you're personally connected to it. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I voted for her for a couple of reasons, but I'm concerned about the government shutdown and the impact on the employees. It's employees who get everything from different ranges in salary. So it just supports our economy. It's a big part of the economy. And people being at home worrying about if they're going to have a job when they come back, how to, pay their rent, how to get food. It's just a huge concern. But I voted her for several reasons. I have kids in college. I also have a senior citizen as a mom who I personally take care of. So it's a whole encompass thing. We just need, society just needs to be better.
And the government shutdown. I mean, everybody knows someone in this county, seemingly, who either works for the government or you work for the government yourself,
right.
And that's affected a lot of your neighbors as well.
Right. Yes, it does. It impacts not just Virginia. It's the whole DMV area.
Right.
So the shutdown does impact us all. How we going to pay our bills? Just financially, emotionally. And you don't want to see your neighbors and everybody suffer. So
thank you for talking to us, Cheryl. Good luck, and good luck to you and your neighbors.
Thank you.
All right, guys, gonna wrap it back over to you. We got about 4 more hours until the polls close today. Then they're going to count everything electronically and feed it into the government center here in Loudoun County. That's going to be an exciting time. So we want our viewers to stay with CNN as we get the results in real time. It's really what makes this so much fun, to talk to voters in real time, to show you the process in real time. And we got a few more hours to go at this very, very busy polling station in Northern Virginia.
No doubt, and we'll likely get busier as we get closer to rush hour. Brian Todd in Virginia, thank you so much. Danny Freeman now is in New Jersey, where a governor's race is going to be decided. Danny, what's the latest there?
Well, Boris, and first I'll just say I'm jealous of both Brian and Omar, because in New Jersey they're a little more strict about keeping reporters outside of the actual polling places. They came out with a tape measure to make sure we were far enough away to make sure people are comfortable while they're voting. But here's what I'll tell you from my vantage point here. We've been speaking to a lot of voters out here. We're in Passaic County. It's a very crucial county because it was a swing county, essentially, from 2020 to 2024. It was a Biden county that flipped to a Trump county. And the big question is now, when it comes to this governor's race between Republican Jack Ciattarelli and Democrat Mikey Sherrill, can the Republican Ciattarelli continue to build on the gains that President Trump did last year? One of the key demographic groups, specifically where we are in Passaic, are Latinos, Boris. We've been talking about this all afternoon. I've been speaking with Latinos, some who said, listen, I'm a Latino in this community. I have voted Democrat for years. Others who told me they're the example. The gentleman, Cesar Tavares, who said, I was a Democrat, but I decided to switch to the Republican, voting for Ciattarelli because I think they have our interests in mind. But I want you to take a listen to one voter we spoke with. Her name is Maria, and just mind you, she traveled from Peru just to get back to vote today. Take a listen. What made you come out and vote today?
Oh, it's so very important. We have to save the, democracy and the right to vote and the right to speech and the freedom of speech.
And Boris, Brianna, I'll just say that a lot of voters here saying that a lot of the national politics really crept into this race in New Jersey. We'll, of course, wait to see those results as they come in a little later. Boris, Brianna?
All right, Danny, thank you so much. And next time Danny fills in, we'll get that tape measure.
Yeah.
We can, just make sure that Danny is appropriately
far
distanced
enough away.
away.
Not bother anybody.
That's right.
Just kidding.
We love Danny. All right, so the ballot counts will be coming in fast and furious as the polls close. We have Chief Data Analyst Harry Enton digging through the numbers, and he's going to keep doing this all night long. Harry, what are you looking for tonight?
Yeah, you know, I will say, who wants to stay away from Danny Freeman? One of the nicest guys in the
That's
entire
right.
world.
Totally kidding.
Totally kidding, totally kidding. If they only knew how nice he was. Look, I think there are three things I'm keeping my eye out on, the three key races, right? You know, down in Virginia, what I'm interested in is ticket splitting, right? We have Abigail Spanberger, who's obviously the Democratic nominee for governor, but you also have races for lieutenant governor and attorney general as well. Jay Jones, who's running as the Democratic nominee for attorney general down in Virginia, has definitely faced some problems. He had a whole texting scandal, things he said over text that he had to apologize for. And I think one of the key questions for me is, are the people who are going to vote Democratic at the top of the ticket for Spanberger going to fill out that entire ballot being Democratic? Now, in terms of New Jersey, look, Danny took a little bit of my thunder away from me, because what I was going to say was I am interested to see whether or not that the gains that Donald Trump made among Hispanic voters actually hold in 2025 for Jack Ciattarelli. And one of the places I'm interested in looking at, of course, is Passaic County, which, of course, there are a lot of Latinos live, you know, but we're also going to be looking at places like Perth Amboy as well in New Jersey. If Ciattarelli is able to hold those Trump gains among Hispanics, game on, then he has a real shot of winning. But if he doesn't, well, then I think you got to be essentially looking at the Republican, the Democrat leading there.
And Harry, you have a new way to watch returns tonight. Explain it to us.
Yeah, okay, so I have these notes that I took down for myself over here on this side of the page, okay, because I'm not used to actually doing ads in terms of promos and live television. But if you look at CNN.com/watch, we're going to have this new telecast that's going to be showing from 8:30 to 10:30. It's going to be me, it's going to be Ben Shapiro, it's going to be Charlemagne the God. We're going to have a slew of voices in the left, right, and center. We're going to talk about the issues of the day in a much chiller way. Boris, of course, you might be familiar with the Manning cast, of course, is an alternate way to watch Monday Night Football. This is an alternate way to watch, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We got a pinball machine. We've got foosball. It's going to be just interesting. And when I need to, I will chime in with the results.
We got to get a pinball machine.
Yeah, where's my
table
foosball at?
You come up to New York, we'll get you a pinball machine.
All right. Sounds good, Harry. Harry,
Take your word for it.
Thanks so much. We'll be
Thank you.
waiting to see how that looks. Still to
gonna
come,
look
the
great.
White House is saying that it will partially fund critical food aid during the government shutdown, despite President Trump saying SNAP payments will only resume after the shutdown ends.
Plus, the UN warning the world has failed to meet a critical climate change goal, and current policies to reduce greenhouse emissions are simply not enough.
SNAP recipients are really on a roller coaster when it comes to whether they're going to get the funds they desperately need. President Trump posted today on Truth Social that those benefits are not going to be paid while the government is shut down.
Federal judges have ruled differently. On Friday, two ordered the White House is obligated to pay those benefits. Earlier today, though, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the White House was complying with those orders, seeming to contradict the president's post. Listen.
The administration is fully complying with the court order. I just spoke to the president about it. The recipients of these SNAP benefits need to understand it's going to take some time to receive this money because the Democrats have forced the administration into a very untenable position.
CNN's Kristen Holmes joins us now live at the White House. Kristen, not sure that actually clears up the confusion about whether those benefits are going to get paid or not.
Yeah, she was clearly trying to clarify or correct President Trump because we saw this enormous role reversal, this course correction that he had today on Truth Social, where he essentially threatened to withhold all of these SNAP benefits until the shutdown was over. But as you noted, this is coming after courts had ruled that some of those benefits still needed to be paid out. So Caroline Leavitt there talking about how she spoke to the president, saying that these benefits were still going to come because they are fully complying with the court. So unclear whether or not President Trump didn't understand what exactly was going on or was not read in on this court ruling. I mean, this is really throwing a lot of people into confusion, and their very livelihoods are at stake. Just a reminder, 42 million people in America receive those SNAP benefits, and this kind of jerking around is putting a lot of people at unease.
And Kristen, you also asked a follow-up question about the president's MRI and why doctors ordered it. Did you get an answer on that?
No, I didn't. We thought we might get a little bit more of an answer, given particularly that President Trump was the one who informed the press that he had had an MRI and said over and over again that he wanted to be transparent. At one point, he said that we should ask the doctors, which of course we have, about those results, about the testing, and not heard back. She said she would get back to me on what the MRI was about. And just one thing to keep in mind, the reason why this is at the key of everything, not just because it's President Trump's health and it's the President of the United States' health, but also because one of the things that they had said was this idea that this was a routine checkup, a follow-up from another appointment. But when you're talking about an MRI, that's a very specific testing that's ordered for something to find results in something specifically. So that was the question. When are we going to learn about this, particularly as President Trump has continued to say he wants to be transparent about it, and yet we have no answers.
That's a good point. Kristen Holmes, we know that you'll keep asking. Thank you. Former Vice President and Chief Architect of the War on Terror, Dick Cheney, has died. We have a look at his life and legacy next. Former Vice President Dick Cheney has died at the age of 84. The longtime fixture in Republican politics served in Congress, the Pentagon, and the White House. Cheney died last night surrounded by family, including his wife of 61 years, Lynn, and his two daughters, Liz and Mary.
This is a live look at the White House where you can see that flags have been lowered to half staff. CNN's Jamie Gangel is back with us. And Jamie, Cheney leaves behind a complicated legacy.
Sure. So, for one generation, he was one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, vice president in history. He changed the role from being ceremonial to really being a partner with Bush, but also he became a lightning rod for critics because of his stand on enhanced interrogation after 9/11 and the Iraq War. That said, there's another generation that really knows him as Liz Cheney's father. And Liz Cheney, I spoke to her several times in the last couple of weeks. She wants people to know that she hopes people will understand that the fact that she was able to stand up to Donald Trump had a lot to do with the way her father raised her and, voting for his impeachment. And I just want to show a little bit of an ad that Dick Cheney made for his daughter's reelection campaign.
In our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He is a coward. A real man wouldn't lie to his supporters. He lost his election, and he lost big. I know it, he knows it, and deep down, I think most Republicans know it.
It's a remarkable ad. Dick Cheney was a Republican's Republican, a conservative's conservative. So Liz Cheney wants people to know that her father put country over party.
And as Boris was noting, the flags have been lowered, right? But we haven't heard from President Trump yet.
No, it's very interesting. So this morning, we saw the flags were lowered to half staff, and we assumed at first that that was because President Trump had ordered them, and we've been waiting for a statement, a proclamation. It turns out there is a law when vice presidents die that you lower the flags for 10 days. So that is the reason, but we have not heard a word from Donald Trump yet. Another question: will Vice President Cheney be offered the honor of lying in state at the Capitol? Speaker Mike Johnson says he does not know yet, because I'm guessing he has to check in with the White House first.
Our reporting indicates that the president is aware that Cheney died, so we'll wait and see when he weighs in on that. Jamie Gangel, thank you so much for the reporting. So voting is underway in California for Proposition 50. That's an initiative to redraw the state's congressional map. Up next, how creating new districts can dramatically shift political power.
Today, Californians will decide whether to adopt a new congressional map, and it's a move the Democratic leaders hope will help their party win 5 more House seats. The redistricting effort is being led by Governor Gavin Newsom and was in direct response to Texas Republicans redrawing their maps.
If Prop 50 passes, it could have far-reaching implications in next year's midterms and even beyond. So we wanted to give you a virtual look at what goes into these redistricting efforts and why it sparked controversy. Redistricting has sparked major political and legal battles, but what exactly is it? Let's break it down using this hypothetical imaginary state as an example. Say our state is allocated 5 congressional districts based on its population. Each district should hold about the same number of people so that its representation in Congress is equal. Redistricting typically happens every 10 years following the release of the U.S. Census. So 10 years later, the newest census shows us that our imaginary state still has the same number of people, but many have moved around to different neighborhoods. So the state redraws its 5 districts to balance things out. The new map isn't quite as neat, but it is better representative of where people live. Now, what if our state's voters leaned something like this? Under these new district lines, the balance of power is 3 seats for Party A, 2 for Party B. And say, in our hypothetical, that Party A is in charge of drawing the map. They may be inclined to redistrict in a way that boosts their party's advantage. So they might redraw their lines something like this, shifting the balance of power to 4 seats for A and just 1 for B. When district lines are drawn this way to give one party more power, that is called gerrymandering. And what's the result? Voters might not be fairly represented. What's not hypothetical? Both Democrats and Republicans use gerrymandering across the country. Under current law, racial gerrymandering, or drawing lines to minimize the voting power of a specific racial group, is illegal. But partisan gerrymandering is allowed under federal law, and there are ongoing arguments about what a fair map really looks like and how to best represent a state. So when you see districts stretched and warped into abstract shapes, it can be a sign of gerrymandering. And those potential party gains, even small ones, matter. In recent years, control of the House has been decided by razor-thin margins. Even a single seat could determine which party controls the chamber. Last year, Americans elected 220 Republicans to 215 Democrats. And now both parties are fighting for every possible seat ahead of the 2026 midterms. Earlier this year, Missouri Republicans redistricted with a goal of eliminating one of the state's 2 Democratic-held seats. Their target, the 5th District, home to Kansas City, one of Missouri's largest cities. In the last House race, the 5th District went about 60% Democratic to 40% Republican. But under the new plan, Missouri's 5th District is carved into 3 pieces. Each piece is then combined with more Republican areas, diluting what was once a Democratic seat into 3 new districts that all lean Republican. In Texas, Republicans have recently redrawn the map with the goal of picking up 5 more House seats, a move that then prompted Democrats in California to propose their own redistricting plan. That's why tonight, California voters will decide whether to approve Proposition 50, a measure that would authorize a new Democratic-drawn map, one designed to offset the Republican gains in Texas by aiming to secure 5 additional House seats for Democrats. These new maps will have their first test next year in the 2026 midterms, when both parties will be fighting to tip the scale to determine the balance of power in the House of Representatives. And these fights are expected to get ugly. Let's discuss with Karen Finney, a CNN political analyst and former senior advisor to Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. Also with us, CNN political commentator and Republican strategist Sir Michael Singleton. Thank you both for being with us. Karen, what are you anticipating is going to come tonight? It seems like Proposition 50 is going to pass.
It does look that way, which is both good for Democrats in this redistricting battle, but also it's a kind of a psychic victory, given that, Democrats in Washington have very limited power that they can really utilize. Our Democratic governors and attorneys generals have been the ones who really had to do the lawsuits and kind of take the fight to Trump, if you will. And so I think people will look at this is one way of a governor using their power to try to stop the gerrymandering or to try to stop the impact of what we're seeing President Trump trying to do with these racial gerrymandering tactics.
Sure, Michael, what do you think? And, knowing that this was kicked off by a mid-decade redistricting in Texas, and this is probably just one battle in this war, I mean, how bad do you see this as being for the country, this back and forth over the redistricting?
Well, look, I mean, every single state will either be a red or a blue state. I think the idea of sort of purple states like my state of Virginia at some point, Brianna, to be quite frank, will just be a bygone era. That said, I think Republicans are likely going to have a slight advantage over my Democratic friends if you're looking at a redistricting delta. And by that, I mean who's going to add or subtract to their overall vote count in terms of seats in the House. You're looking at Missouri, as Boris pointed out in the package. You also have North Carolina. There are also a slew of other Republican states where Republicans not only control the state legislature, but also hold the governor's seat. So I think there is a likelihood for Republicans to be slightly more successful in this effort than my Democratic friends. So then when we get to midterms, you start looking at the math, and then you start wondering, well, even if Democrats can somehow continue to perform as well as they have done with the special elections we've seen so far this year, they've performed about 15 points on average compared to Kamala Harris in those same congressional districts last November. The math becomes very, very tight. And so the advantage that one could argue that Democrats would have if you're looking today to next year, they may not actually have that advantage come November 2026.
Overall, Michael, when you think about the impact that these moves are having on the ability of Congress to actually represent the people and the impact that it has on democracy, doesn't it just harm everyone overall? Doesn't it hurt both parties long term?
So I'll take off my political hat and I guess put on my philosopher's hat. Absolutely, Boris. No one benefits if the idea of bipartisanship is a bad word. If Democrats and Republicans don't feel incentivized to work with one another on the most consequential issues, whether it's health care, we're having that argument right now, or infrastructure, or military, or education, for example, it's going to make things really difficult for the average layperson who relies upon a functioning government to pass legislation to their benefit. So, to be frank, no, it's not good for the country. No, it's not good for democracy. But in terms of the politics, yes, it's good for Democrats. Yes, it's good for Republicans.
Yeah, political fortunes, it can be very good for. What about Gavin Newsom? How is it going to be for him?
Well, it certainly raised his profile, which has obviously been a goal of his over the last year. And I think if they're successful, it will give him a springboard to continue having that conversation. I do want to say,
what do you think, Karen, might he be doing?
Maybe.
Where would
is there an election
go?
coming that maybe
like a big one, like a big one, right?
Yeah.
No, for the big race. Okay, got it.
Presidential aspirations. Certainly, it would certainly help him and give him, frankly, it's interesting, like how the Democratic governors have chosen to handle Trump has been very different. If you notice, from Whitmer to Pritzker, right? Some of that has to do with what they need from the federal government. But Gavin Newsom is one who has a lot of freedom to do a lot. He's got a legislature that he can, really control and work with. So, it's a good springboard for him for presidential.
The outcome of this vote on Prop 50 may also have a lot to do with Speaker Emeritus Nancy Pelosi's future. She said that she hasn't decided whether she's running for re-election or not. She's 85.
Yeah.
I was speaking to Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal earlier, who's been very vocal about having younger folks rise to leadership within the party.
Yeah.
And I cited to her the statistic that in the House specifically, Democrats have double the number of folks over 70 that Republicans have.
I heard you say that and I was like, what? Look, I actually look at it a little bit differently. I think it is more about one of the things the party has to do is rebuild our credibility and our trust with voters. And part of it is, if you've been around a long time and you're not seen as someone who has been able to deliver, then voters are like Nancy Pelosi. When she was the speaker, she delivered. She got stuff done. So her age, I think, was less of the issue. So I think that's part of what we're seeing is this desire. Several governors, their mantra is get shit done, right? And so I just realized we're on cable, so I can say that. And so I think that's part of it as well when we talk. But yes, younger, fresh faces with new ideas, but also building trust and credibility to say they can actually deliver on the things that they're talking about.
And sure, Michael, I want to ask you about the New York City mayor's race, because President Trump offered this last-minute endorsement of not the Republican candidate, but the independent candidate, former Governor Andrew Cuomo. What do you think the calculation or just the effect is there?
Well, look, he's a New Yorker, so I'm not necessarily surprised. But politically, Brianna, I am happy that Mr. Mamdani is going to become the next mayor of New York, because I can tell you that Republicans already have scripts written to run campaign-targeted ads in very close races next year. We're prepared for this. We want to be able to make the argument to the American people that the Democratic Party is a party that represents further government control, more government control, a democratic socialism light. We're not going to call it that. We're just going to call it socialism. Most Americans will reject that, and the polling suggests that is indeed the case. And so while I appreciate the president for endorsing Cuomo, I wish it was Cuomo, even though I'm not a Democrat. I think he would have done better for most residents there. As a strategist, I love the idea that Mamdani is going to become the face of the Democratic Party.
Real quick, Karen.
He is one of the many faces, perhaps I would say, of the party. But most importantly, I think there's a lot to be learned about the way Mamdani has campaigned. That's what I hope Democrats take away from it. Go everywhere where people are, talk to them, hear their concerns, and focus on their needs. That, to me, is the most important lesson from New York. Cuomo was running an old-style campaign that was completely ineffective.
We'll see how Mamdani does. That's going to have a lot to do with this. Sure, Michael. Karen, thank you so much to both of you. And up next,
Good to see you, Karen.
Good to see both of you. The Transportation Secretary is warning of mass chaos in the nation's airports if the shutdown continues. Stay with us for that.
As the government shutdown drags on, the Department of Transportation says it may close some parts of U.S. airspace because of staffing shortages. Secretary Sean Duffy warned of, quote, mass chaos if the shutdown continues into next week. Earlier today, the White House was asked about whether people should fly, given Duffy's concerns. Here's the press secretary.
The administration is encouraging Democrats to reopen the federal government so this chaos and disruption to our air traffic control system in the United States of America stops. We want to reopen the government so we can resume travel in the safest and most efficient way possible, especially as we head into the busiest travel season of the month.
CNN aviation correspondent Pete Muntean is with us now on this story. Pete, what is the situation today?
Well, the delay numbers continue to climb today, Brianna. We're more than halfway through what we saw yesterday for the entire day. The delays for air traffic control staffing shortages keep popping up, and both of Houston's airports are now under FAA-implemented delays. That's Houston Hobby and Houston George Bush. Also, Phoenix Sky Harbor on the delay list because there is not enough staff in the airport's control tower. There's also shortages in the tower at Denver International Airport. Also, the facility responsible for low-altitude flights near Detroit. That facility, very rarely on the list, has been about 4 times since the shutdown began. Though the shortages in Denver and Detroit are apparently not deep enough yet to trigger mass delays, does seem that no place is safe from these shortages as air traffic controllers continue to report to work without pay, and naturally many of them calling out sick, though the Union of Controllers insists none of this is coordinated. This past weekend was the worst for air traffic control staffing shortages since the shutdown began. And Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy just said in a press conference he simply just can't find money to pay controllers. It's not as easy as that. He also had a stark warning about what happens if the shutdown continues and controllers continue to call out. Listen.
If you bring us to a week from today, Democrats, you will see mass chaos, you will see mass flight delays, you'll see mass cancellations, and you may see us close certain parts of the airspace because we just cannot manage it.
A little bit of context here, though. The closure of airspace has essentially been happening in some ways, although Duffy putting a more dramatic spin on it. TSA security officers also not getting paid. And that means these long lines at places like Houston George Bush Intercontinental Airport. Sunday and Monday, the lines there stretched up to 3 hours. And the airport says, though, today, waits are down to about an hour. Still pretty long when you consider the average TSA wait time is about 5 minutes. The fix for these problems really can't come soon enough. And there's not much movement in Congress. Last week, air traffic controllers got a $0 paycheck. They'll get another $0 pay stub the day after tomorrow. It's really tough for them.
It certainly is. Pete Montaigne, thank you so much for the latest there. And coming up, a new climate report says the world is failing to slow the rise in global temperatures and will not reach the goals set in the Paris Climate Agreement. We have details next.
A new report from the UN says the planet is on track to get hotter, exceeding the global warming goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius set by the 2015 Paris Agreement, which is an international treaty signed by nearly 200 countries to combat climate change.
The findings claim that countries haven't reduced pollution fast enough and will likely go over that target. CNN's chief climate correspondent Bill Weir is with us now on this. Bill, how dire is this situation?
Well, Brianna, it's bad, but it could be a lot worse. That's what I'm hearing from scientists today. 10 years ago, they were telling us that the world was on track to heat up by 4 to 5 degrees Celsius. That's 8 to 10 Fahrenheit, which would have just been cataclysmic, thanks to the just sinking price of renewable energy, solar, wind, and storage, thanks to the efforts of climate negotiations over the last decade. It looks like we're now on track to hit about 2.8 degrees of warming. Not as bad, but still not great. Just for reference, at 1.5, we lose about 75% of coral reefs around the world. At 2 degrees, almost all of them are wiped out. It doubles the amount of people, the share of the population exposed to deadly heat as well. But every 1/10 of a degree matters and will be measured in ecosystems and coral reefs and glaciers and human lives. So it'll be interesting to watch this COP and see if this rallies people or deflates them.
On the point of this COP gathering in Brazil, delegates from around the world are going there. The Trump administration, as you reported a few days ago, not sending any U.S. representatives to negotiate. I mean, what does that mean broadly and for the Paris Accord specifically?
Well, yeah, the U.S. And Donald Trump is very much the elephant not in the room. It remains to be seen if he'll try to sabotage these from afar, as he did with a carbon tax, a potential carbon tax on maritime shipping. That was set to, negotiators were set to settle on that. He fired off a Truth Social post, said, don't vote for this, and the whole thing was postponed a year. He could still try to do that. People like Gavin Newsom, a governor of California, part of a consortium, including J.B. Pritzker and big city mayors and others, saying America is still in. California is the world's 4th largest economy, and most days it is running on solar, wind, and storage throughout the middle of the day. And so to highlight the efforts that are being made at the city level, how many people do care about this, regardless of the politics of the United States right now. But there's no denying that Trump pulling the U.S. out has undermined ambition. About 60 countries have delivered their updated plans. Here's what we want to do for the next decade. 100 countries have not. And it has taken the momentum away. China, for the first time, is promising to bend their carbon curve. That's a positive step, but it is fraught. And this latest report really is deflating heading into COP30.
What's the risk, Bill, to the U.S.? I mean, we know what the global risk is, but what's the risk to the U.S. of ceding that role of leadership on this issue?
Well, it gives up the new post-carbon economy to China and Europe, and which is leaning into that change. They're still putting a lot of coal plants online in China, but at the same time, the U.S. is trying to cling to coal for the next 100 years. So a big difference in approach.
All right, Bill Weir, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We should mention Jake Tapper and Aaron Burnett begin our special election coverage at 5 p.m. and the Arena with Casey Hunt starts right now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Casey Hunt. Welcome to the Arena. It is Election Day in America. A year after voters sent Donald Trump back to the White House, Americans are once again heading to the polls, and with Trump's popularity at the lowest since he's been reelected, a number of key races will reveal a lot tonight about the mood of the electorate. One of the most closely watched contests, the race to run the nation's largest city. As of this afternoon, already more than 1 million people have voted, and President Trump is trying his best to get Andrew Cuomo across the finish line. He posted this online today. Any Jewish person that votes for Zohran Mamdani, a proven and self-professed Jew hater, is a stupid person. Trump also threatening to pull federal funding for the city if Mamdani wins. This morning, Mamdani responded this way.
What we see in the language of Donald Trump is a premise as if it is his decision on whether or not to fund a city the very money that this city is owed. And I look forward to utilizing every single tool at my disposal as the next mayor of this city to fight for the people of it. But I will not be intimidated by this president. I will not be intimidated by anyone, because my job here is to serve the people of this city.
Also today, just to the west of New York City, New Jersey will pick its next governor. The two leading candidates locked in a close race. If Democrat Mikey Sherrill wins, it'll be the first time since the 1960s that the state has elected a governor from the same party 3 times in a row. And closer to home here in Virginia, the race for governor being watched closely as Democrats try to find their footing and hone in on what their message is going to be ahead of next year's midterm elections. We have so much to get to over the next hour. Let's get off the sidelines and head into the arena. My panel's here, and we have reporters live in New York, Virginia, and New Jersey. And let's get started at Mamdani's HQ, where we find Gloria Pazmino. Gloria, what's the latest there?
Well, Casey, we are inside of Brooklyn Paramount Theater. We are in downtown Brooklyn, and I have to say it is significant that Mamdani's camp has chosen Brooklyn as their headquarters tonight. And the reason for that is because that is the largest and most populous borough in New York City, and it also has had the largest share of the voter turnout so far. Now, I've been speaking with Mamdani's aides throughout the day, and they are closely watching the returns, specifically in Brooklyn, even though this is not Mamdani territory, so to speak. He lives in Queens and has represented a Queens State Assembly district for the past few years. But they're focused in Brooklyn, and the reason for that is because this is where much of Zohran Mamdani's base is, and they are hoping that turnout is significant in specific areas of Brooklyn, including areas like Fort Greene, where he made a stop earlier today, alongside with the State Attorney General, Letitia James. What's referred to as Brownstone, Brooklyn, here in New York City is very much Mamdani country, and they're hoping that if the numbers look good in those precincts, it means that he is increasing his share of the voter turnout. Now, as you said in the beginning, already this election has shattered records. More than 1 million New Yorkers have already cast their vote. That's already beat the record for the last mayoral election, and it's beat the record for the last presidential election, which typically has more voter turnout. Now, we're in the lobby of the Brooklyn Paramount Theater. This theater has capacity for 3,000 people. Mamdani's aides tell me they expect to fill it tonight. We are hoping to get inside soon. For now, they are preparing this venue for what is expected to be a busy and nerve-wracking evening. But as we heard it from Mamdani himself earlier today, he is feeling confident, although not complacent, going into tonight. The campaign just announced they have knocked on 3 million doors. So much about any campaign, no matter where you're running it, is about the ground game. And no matter how you feel about the candidates, Mamdani definitely has had the strongest ground game of these 3 candidates, and we'll see if it shows this evening. Casey.
All right, Gloria Pazmino for us. Thanks very much for that. Now let's head to Virginia, where Brad Todd joins us live in the arena from Aldie, Virginia. This was a town that voted for Republican Glenn Youngkin in the last governor's race. Before that, it went for the Democrat, Ralph Northam. Brian, Trump didn't endorse the Republican in this race, and of course, Abigail Spanberger, the Democrat, is the heavy favorite. What are you hearing?
Right, Casey. That dynamic is interesting here because not only did Winsome Earl Sears, the Republican, not get President Trump's endorsement, but the Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor, John Reed, did not get full-throated support from Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin, who actually asked Reed to get out of the race early in this race. We are hitting the rush hour surge of voters here. A bunch of them just came in, and this place has already been packed with activity all day long. Almost 1,000 voters coming through this precinct, which is one of the busiest precincts in Northern Virginia. Our photojournalist Manny is going to go in ahead of me. Now, there are a lot of reasons here why we love covering elections here in Virginia. One is to show the process, which I'm going to show you in a second. One other one is history being made here in Virginia. Manny, come on over here. I'm going to show you the ballot here. History is going to be made here in Virginia no matter who wins, because, Casey, you were just referring to it. Abigail Spanberger is on the ticket. No matter who wins, Abigail Spanberger or Winsome Earl Sears, Virginia gets its first female governor as of tonight. Also, Ghazala Hashmi, the Democratic candidate for lieutenant governor, if she wins, she becomes the first Muslim to hold statewide office in the state of Virginia. So history being made is a big reason that we're jazzed about being here today. Another reason, as we walk over here among this line of voters and between the voters here, sorry guys, thanks very much, another reason we love covering these races is to show you the process, because here in Virginia they have changed the rules. In years past, they did not let us into the voting rooms. We had to stay outside and could maybe peer in from a long distance. Now we get access, and we can show you voters checking in here. They're standing in line. They get their paper ballots over there. They go old school here in Virginia with paper ballots. Then they go to these voting stations here. There are 9 of them set up, and the voters themselves have full ownership of their paper ballots. They are the only ones that can handle them. They're the only ones that can put them into the counter right there. Another reason we love covering these races is because we get to speak to voters in real time about what is really driving them. Mariam Jarati is a voter we spoke to just a moment ago. Immigration was first and foremost on her mind. Take a listen.
I always vote since I became a citizen, and that was 20 years ago. And I migrated from Kenya originally. My family is back home in Kenya, and how I see how things are going on, like with families being separated. As a human being, as a mother, separating families, especially children, from their mothers or fathers, I don't believe in that. So that made me come out and also come and vote.
So that's one big issue. Another one is the government shutdown. Tens of thousands of government workers live here in Loudoun County. A lot of them told us that is really driving them to come out to vote today. Their anger over that. This county, Casey, has just been growing by leaps and bounds. Judy Brown is the head of the County Board of Elections here in Loudoun County. When she first started in that job 40 years ago, there were 30 voting precincts. There are now 107 voting precincts here in Loudoun County. It has exploded in relevance and importance. That's why the candidates are here, and that's why they've been, really emphasizing coming here during the campaign. Casey?
Yeah, and Brian, for any of us who actually live in this area, driving the highway that takes you to Loudoun County will tell you exactly what you just outlined, which is that it has exploded in population. Brian Todd, thank you very much for that reporting. All right, my panel is here in the arena. Jamie Gangel, Lulu Garcia-Navarro, Ashley Allison, David Urban, all here. Thank you all very much. It's always wonderful to be here on an election day. Jamie Gangel, set the table here. I mean, obviously, Virginia and New Jersey have candidates that certainly the more establishment of the party want to cast as moderate. But it's Zohran Mamdani that has really garnered the attention, the headlines for the way he's been campaigning. How do you see tonight playing out?
Well, it's all about Brooklyn, of course. Yeah.
What else would it be about?
I just think you have to look at these races differently. The New York City's mayor's race, I'm from New York, I'm from the city, there's nothing else like it. New Jersey looks like it's going to be a tight race. Virginia, not so much, completely different. I also think we should mention in California, Prop 50, which is going to tell us about redistricting. I'll tell you one group that I think will watch all of these races for different reasons carefully, and those are both Republicans and Democrats in the House who are thinking about the midterm elections. When all is said and done after tonight, they're going to look at these numbers very carefully to see who turned out and where the votes went.
David Urban, I want to talk about Donald Trump for a second because at the top there, I noticed you're reacting to what he had to say about Andrew Cuomo and this endorsement coming in last night. We read his most recent post saying that any Jewish person that votes for him is he calls him a professed Jew hater, calls Mamdani a Jew hater, and says that a Jewish person that votes for him is a stupid person. He said, I would much rather see a Democrat who has a record of success win than a communist with no experience and a record of total and complete failure. Whether you personally like Andrew Cuomo or not, you really have no choice. You must vote for him and hope he does a fantastic job. He is capable of it. Mamdani is not. Now, I thought the timing of this was interesting, right? Republicans vote on Election Day, right? And there is a Republican in the race.
Yeah, a lot to unpack.
There's a lot going on here. Why are you laughing about this?
Well, listen, I don't necessarily disagree with the president's tweet there. Maybe the tone and tenor of it, but Zohran Mamdani never distanced himself from the globalized, the Intifada kind of crowd, and that's where he got a lot of energy there. But look, we had Curtis Sliwa on the other day, yesterday actually. It seems like a lot longer ago. I really wish Republicans would have given him a chance. He did an a great job at the debate. I loved his slogan, jingoistic kind of let's lock up criminals, not toothpaste, right? I mean, that's a guy. He is of New York. He's from New York. I think if he had been given a chance, an opportunity, listen, he might not have, toppled Mamdani, who's kind of a generational figure here politically, but I think he'd been doing much, much better than former Governor Cuomo, who's got so much baggage. He's dragging it around like a duffel bag everywhere he goes. Like nobody in Staten Island, no matter how much they love Donald Trump, is going to vote for Cuomo. Right. Like they love Donald Trump on Staten Island, but they're not voting for Cuomo no matter what he says. Now, you could have turned out the entire Staten Island for Curtis Sliwa. You could have had so many more Republicans. It might have been a little bit more of a sporty race. I just think it's, I'm sure the president likes him because of his time in New York, but, I'm a Sliwa guy, not a Cuomo guy.
Wah, wah, wah. I mean, come on. Curtis Sliwa was never going to be a viable candidate, and he's run. This is not a man that was ever going to get traction. And let's talk about the real issue in New York, which is affordability, which is what Mamdani was able to talk about over and over again. Smartly. He did not get distracted by allegations about his, beliefs on Israel-Palestine or his religion or his ethnicity. He was very focused on what he was going to do for New Yorkers, and that resonated
by the way, Lulu,
in Brooklyn and beyond.
Yeah, but not there. I think in New Jersey, I think in Virginia. Look, I think Democrats, Wednesday morning, they're going to wake up, they should say, maybe this economy thing is really something important, right? I think that's the ticket, right?
Okay. David, wait a minute. Okay. You're literally, what experience does Curtis Sliwa have actually other than running the Guardian Angels? Like,
what did Mamdani
run? Right. My point, you just made my point. Exactly. The hit on Mamdani has been, despite Donald Trump's, aggressive tweet he just put out, the big issue is people are like, Mamdani doesn't have experience. And you literally are saying you wanted to vote for somebody else that really doesn't have any experience of running. So at
least Curtis Sliwa doesn't want, Sliwa's got policies, I think, that align with people.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm saying
the
reason why the Republicans did not rally around Sliwa is because he too is a flawed candidate that doesn't have it. I never thought Cuomo lost. He should have got out the race and disappeared. He was not the person that should have been the intervention. And I don't think Republicans were running Andrew Cuomo. Cuomo was running Andrew Cuomo.
Well, that is definitely the case, Cuomo running Andrew Cuomo. I want to play some of what Democrats have been saying inside their own party about Zohran Mamdani, who is a self-professed Democratic socialist, and that has divided the party here in Washington in many ways. It's on display here. Take a look.
Socialism is not the future of my party. We all know how socialism works out.
He shouldn't be in the Democratic Party. He's an admitted socialist. He should be in the Socialist Party.
Someone asked me before, is Zohran Mamdani the future of the Democratic Party? I said, no, he's the future of the Democratic Socialist Party. He's not a Democrat.
I mean, Ashley, is he the future of the party?
I don't know, but I don't think they are
make
either.
that noise.
though.
Make
in
Brooklyn.
I actually think it's funny the people who are saying that he's not the future of the Democratic Party, they aren't either.
Right.
So we actually don't know who the future of the Democratic Party is. But here's the thing. My party needs to wake up and actually look at what just happened to the Republican Party. When Donald Trump ran in 2016, the same thing that people are saying about Zohran Mamdani, people were saying about Donald Trump. And Donald Trump reinvented the Republican Party, which is what it is the MAGA party now. I'm not saying that Zohran's agenda should be the framework of the Democratic Party, but there is an opportunity for Democrats to use this election to start to rebrand themselves. Because as much as people dislike Donald Trump, they actually are disliking the Democrats in Washington.
Yeah, listen, as a Republican, I'm worried because the coalition that we put together, right, of black and brown working class people, not traditional Republican voters, right? If Mamdani could figure a way to lure those people back somehow and get them in the tent, that's going to be bad for the Republican Party, right? And so we ignore those people at our own peril.
And I would also say the lesson, I think, of the 2018 election when they tried to make AOC and the Squad the face of the Democratic Party, and that did not go well for them.
That's right.
So, I would just warn Republicans and the administration that, people aren't so gullible to think that one man is actually representing an entire party and an entire movement.
Jamie,
just quickly, New York is different, but one other thing, he hasn't been elected yet. He hasn't managed the city yet. What if this guy who's never managed anything turns out to be a brilliant manager and surrounds himself with the right people? I'm not getting ahead of it, but we don't know yet what kind of a leader
I'll give it to you. I don't think that's happening.
All right, now we've got little clips of both of you doing that for the internet's fun. All right, coming up next here in the arena, California voters right now deciding whether to try to reshape the balance of power, not just in their state, but across the country for years to come. Plus, Democrat Mikey Sherrill's answer or lack thereof when asked what piece of legislation she would pass. It's been coming back to haunt her in these final hours of the race for New Jersey governor.
Wow, I would love, that's a really good question because there's so many that are coming to mind right now.
All right, welcome back to our special Election Day coverage. Americans surging to the polls now with just hours left in the day to vote. This, of course, the first major test of Trump's second term. Republicans trying to downplay expectations.
So in 2024, Kamala Harris won Virginia, Kamala Harris won New Jersey, and Kamala Harris won New York, of course. The Democrats, of course, won New York. So I think this election is actually a referendum on where is the Democrat Party.
Where is the Democratic Party? I mean, Jamie Gangel, obviously, that's Marjorie Taylor Greene on The View today, taking her kind of view of things.
By the way, how about that? Marjorie Taylor Greene on The View?
I mean, if you got to appeal to a statewide electorate, David, you might make different choices. But Jamie Gangel, I want to read, the New York Times took a look at kind of what we're seeing play out today across the map. And they pointed out something interesting, which is that there is a divide in how Democrats today have been approaching how to run for the election. So they write this, quote, amid months of tortured political soul searching, Democrats have tried to address their party's failings with new strategies. In New York City, Zohran Mamdani, the frontrunner for mayor, powered a come-from-behind campaign with bold progressive promises. In California, Gavin Newsom has abandoned the party's longstanding preference for abiding by political norms to champion an extraordinary effort to approve a new congressional map. But in New Jersey and Virginia, Ms. Spanberger and Ms. Sherrill have decided to stick with reruns rather than pilot new programming. And what they're talking about when they say these reruns is the way that Sherrill and Spanberger are basically making this about Trump. They're running against President Trump. Here's an example from New Jersey of how Mikey Sherrill has been doing that.
Jack has decided, I'm going to defend Trump. He even gives Trump an A. He'll do whatever Trump tells him to do.
The real problem here is who is not taking on Trump.
Jamie, which strategy here do you think is going to be the most effective in the long run?
I think the key word in that New York Times, tortured. We are having been tortured. Look, you're seeing them appeal in their states and in their races. I do want to go back to Marjorie Taylor Greene for a moment. I think Republicans are really worried when they go back to mispronouncing Kamala Harris's name. It rhymes with Mamala. This is easy, not hard. But I just really think the Democratic Party does not know there is not this unifying force. For better or worse, they do not have Donald Trump, and they're figuring it out one race at a time.
I think it's easier for for Democrats to win when they go after Donald Trump when Donald Trump is not on the ballot, actually.
Yep.
And I think that there could be a wrong lesson that Democrats learn after tonight.
Interesting.
If Cheryl and Spanberger win, there will be people, institutionalists in the party that will say, attack Donald Trump. And I don't actually think that's the lesson that we should be learning. We should be learning how are there creative ways. I think the thing, Prop 50 in California and Zoran in New York got a higher turnout. You should not just be looking at who wins the race, but what type of voters turn out, at what pace and cadence do they turn out? Were you able to get people off the sidelines that didn't vote in 2024 that came out? Those are the lessons, not a messaging framework, but who can you actually activate?
But can I just say something about this, which is the reason that that you're seeing Trump being so sort of discussed in New Jersey is because you are running against an incumbent Democrat who is unpopular. And so therefore, the unifying figure that the Democrats can rally around is Donald Trump. Better, vote for the Democrat who I might not like so much rather than the enemy that's in the White House. So that's what's happening there. And in Virginia, I also think it's a smart move because that is a state that has been heavily impacted by what has happened in the federal government. So, I think one thing that Democrats are best at is when they look at their races locally and they say, how are we going to run for this community? Instead of trying to extrapolate sort of what is the national message, because I do think it is different in every place.
Listen, here, look at this, two things. I'll agree with both these fine women. I agree that you got to learn how to, a different message than orange man bad, right? That doesn't work. But I do agree with Lulu that in Virginia, where there are hundreds of thousands of furloughed federal employees who are, quite upset with Donald Trump and the administration, that's a message that probably sells, and the same in New Jersey. But I do agree with Ms. Allison that orange man bad, not a great strategy. I've been working, got to figure out a way, the economy, the economic message, right, which is really underpinning a lot of this, as people are saying. Again, back to that coalition of working class people, Beaver County, Pennsylvania, where I'm born and raised, Youngstown, Ohio, right? These are the places that Trump won that traditionally he's not winning. And if Democrats could figure out how to crack that nut, we're in trouble.
I also think Republicans should take notice of it's also not like boogeyman socialist. That actually might not work for you all either, because I do think the young.
I'm trying that for a while.
I know. I think the Youngstonians.
I do think we are going to see
the Aliquippians
on that playbook.
I'm trying
I know. John Fetterman and David Urban were going against the Democrats.
But if people feel like their rent actually starts to go lower, or people feel like
that's right,
some people might be like, socialism good, you know what I mean? So, just be careful of how you assign
And what is the big lesson of Donald Trump? The big lesson of Donald Trump is do something.
Yes.
Yeah. Do something. It doesn't matter maybe sometimes what you do, but seem like you are trying to actually help people.
Right.
Be seen acting instead of sitting on the sidelines. All right, coming up next here in the arena, New Jersey Senator Andy Kim will join us. He has been on the trail campaigning for Mikey Sherrill in what has been a close race. We'll talk about how confident he may be going into tonight. Plus, some MAGA Republicans going after Liz Cheney just hours after her father, the former vice president, passed away. Dick Cheney's friend and former Secretary Elaine Chao will be our guest here in the arena. All right, Election Day in America. Trump, of course, looming over the New Jersey governor's race as Republican Jack Ciattarelli vies to turn the state red. Polls show him narrowing the gap with Democrat Mikey Sherrill, four-term Congresswoman, former Navy helicopter pilot. Let's head into the arena with Danny Freeman. He is live outside a polling place in Passaic, New Jersey, less than an hour from Trump's quote-unquote summer White House in Bedminster, New Jersey. Danny, what are you hearing on the ground?
You know, Casey, it's been a very interesting day because I think to your first point there have been two things that I've been watching. First, how much has this particular governor's race been nationalized and essentially become a referendum on Donald Trump? And then also I'm keeping an eye on how Latino voters are acting. But first to that point about how nationalized this race has become, remember, Democratic candidate Mikey Sherrill, she's really been trying to tie Republican Jack Ciattarelli to some of the more unpopular parts of the second Trump presidency. And we actually heard a lot of voters on the ground here say that they were voting for Mikey Sherrill mostly to be a check on the president. So that was the first thing that stood out to me. And then I want to talk about Passaic County, where we are. This was one of those swing counties, Casey, where President Biden won it in 2020 and then President Trump flipped it in 2024. And this county has a very, very large Latino population. And of course, Latinos were drifting towards President Trump, certainly in the last election. So take a listen to a little bit of the sound, because I think both of these bites, or these bites together rather, speak to both the nationalization and gives a clue about how Latinos may behave in this particular race. Was your vote today for Sherrill more about her plan to be governor, or more about being a check against the Trump administration?
Being a check against the Trump administration.
What made you come out and vote today?
Oh, it's so very important. We have to save the, democracy and the right to vote and the right to speech.
A lot of Latinos, though, in this area, they went for Trump last time. Do you think that's going to happen again?
No. I think no. I'm doing Uber. Yesterday, I picked like a 10 passenger between the age 22 and 30. And mostly say they vote in the first time for Donald Trump. No, this time.
Now, Casey, I will say I did speak to a Latino voter who spoke only Spanish, who did say to me that he actually was supporting Ciattarelli, but he was one of those voters that we've been watching because he used to vote only Democrat, but then in this particular election, he decided to go with the Republicans because he newly feels that Republicans are the ones that are looking out for his communities. Again, these are kind of the storylines that I think we're going to see as polls begin to close in a few hours, Casey.
All right, Danny Freeman for us on the ground in New Jersey. Danny, thanks very much. Now joining us here live in the arena is Democratic Senator Andy Kim of New Jersey. He's been out on the trail for Mikey Sherrill all over New Jersey the past couple of weeks. Senator, thanks very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's just talk about where you think this race stands heading into tonight, and we can take a look at how New Jersey has moved in recent elections. I mean, back in 2016, Hillary Clinton won by 14. Biden wins in 2020 by 16 points. But Phil Murphy, only 3 points in 2021, and he, of course, is pretty unpopular. Kamala Harris wins by 6. There is a real question tonight of how tight this race is going to be. What do you think?
Well, look, I also won it last year by about 10%. I was the last Democrat to run statewide, and what I'll say, I was with Mikey for a lot of this weekend. I did about 500 miles driving around the state. And everything, honestly, looks really strong for her. She's closing incredibly strong. Her message about focus on affordability and tying it to the corruption and the lawlessness that we're seeing with the Trump administration. The party is united. I mean, I've never seen the Democratic Party in New Jersey this laser focused and united on a mission since 2018, honestly. And I think that that's all making a big difference. The energy on the ground in New Jersey is even stronger and more focused than it was this time last year. And I say that as being the candidate last year. The energy is even stronger there. So I feel like the momentum is really on Mikey's side.
What do you think that Democrats are doing wrong this time in the second Trump era, where if you look back to 2016 to the 2018 midterms, Trump's approval ratings were down, but Democrats were pretty solid. That's not the case right now. Democrats nationally are having a really hard time. Why?
Well, look, I feel it too, insofar as, in 2016, 2017, that was Trump's first term. There was a real sense of saying, look, this is something that doesn't represent us. We can really show that. Look, in a second term, that's harder to say. And there's a reality that we need to comprehend. Plus, the challenges of affordability are so much more pronounced now than they were even just a few years ago. The pandemic and other issues, the high costs, the inflation, the continued challenges we're seeing from Trump with the tariffs. That is all very pronounced now, and the politics is even more toxic and divided than they were just 8 years ago. So I understand the challenges that are out there. People are tired. They're exhausted by just 8 years of just nonstop battling it out, and it wasn't great even before that. So, but what we're seeing right now, though, is a clarity of mission right now. People know what's at stake. And Donald Trump has frankly helped make that crystal clear here at the end. We have 800,000 people in New Jersey right now not getting food assistance. About half of them are children.
Yeah.
We got 174% increase in healthcare costs right now for those on the Affordable Care Act. They just got word about that on Saturday. So they're taking that energy into Election Day. And I think that's absolutely on the top of people's minds.
The Progressive Change Campaign Committee, obviously the progressive wing of the party, they've been quoted as saying they think Cheryl's campaign is, quote, milquetoast. Are they right or wrong?
Well, look, no, they're wrong. I mean, look, I've been in Congress alongside Mikey. You know, she's been a general election juggernaut in every single race that she's run. You know, and I truly believe that, you know, she is somebody who is connecting with people right now, especially because of her service background. But it's also about building a movement, building a coalition. And that's not just on her, that's on all of us. And I will say, when I was out there this past weekend, that movement is there, that energy is there, and we have to make sure that we're running through the tape here, but we also need to get this ready for the
Mamdani the future of the party?
Look, you know, I say that the future is about focusing on the people, and in particular about a change message. Now, those different candidates, they are changed in different ways, but there's clearly a desire for a change in the status quo. So that is the future of the Democratic Party. The future of the Democratic Party is to embrace a message of change, to stand up against a broken status quo that clearly hasn't delivered for so many people around the country. I believe that needs to be a message of change, a message of anti-corruption, a message of standing up against this lawlessness that we're seeing right now with the Trump administration. I think focusing on any particular person is the wrong approach.
We'll see if that holds when we get to the presidential race. Senator Andy Kim, thank you very much.
Thanks
I really
for having
appreciate your time today. Good luck tonight.
Thank you.
All right, coming up ahead here in the arena, we remember one of the most influential vice presidents, Dick Cheney. We'll talk to his friend, the former Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao. Plus, our Harry Enton will join us to tell us how the results from tonight could shape next year's critical midterm elections. All right, welcome back to our special coverage of Election Day here in the arena. Another major story we've been covering today. The former Vice President, Dick Cheney, has died at 84 years old. Cheney's family saying this morning that he died due to complications from pneumonia, as well as cardiac and vascular disease. A chief architect of America's war on terror and the 2003 invasion of Iraq, Cheney was the most powerful modern vice president. He was also a hardline conservative who was ostracized by his party in recent years over his unsparing criticism of President Trump. Here with me now in the arena, Elaine Chao. She served closely with Cheney as labor secretary for the entirety of the George W. Bush administration. She's also a former transportation secretary under President Trump. Madam Secretary, thanks very much for spending some time with us.
Thanks for having me.
I'd just like to start. There's some photos that we have of you with the former vice president. You worked together for so many years. And what are you remembering? How are you remembering him today?
You know, he's actually a very quiet man, and I think it was deliberate. When he became vice president, he was very parsimonious with his words. And I think it was, in retrospect, he knew that he was going to be quoted every time he opened his mouth. So he was very cautious. He knew his role, and that was to support the president. And he wanted to make sure that the president actually remained the focus of attention. So he always took care to convey his opinions, but away from the cameras in a very judicious way. And because he has so much experience and such gravitas that whatever he said took on a great deal of importance, and people listened.
Is that part of what enabled him to be such a powerful number two? Because it is a very difficult place to be, but he really did have a lot more power than many vice presidents.
Well, I think that's because he has such experience. You know, so few people have had the ability to accumulate such a record of accomplishments, not only in the public sector, not only in the executive branch, but in the legislative branch. I mean, he was in leadership when he was a congressman. And then he also was a CEO of a major energy company, Halliburton. Very few people can make that transition with such ease and facility. And so he carried with him, again, a lot of gravitas. And because of that, people listened.
Madam Secretary, I mean, he was at the top echelons of the leadership Republican Party for decades. He was the vice president. He was the Secretary of Defense. He was the White House Chief of Staff, right?
At the age of 34,
right,
which
the
is
youngest
really amazing.
ever, right?
Yes.
But he passes away as a pariah in the party that he was a leader in for so long. I mean, what do you think his legacy is going to be among Republicans?
Well, let's remember history takes a long-term point of view. The story is not yet complete. We've been through a very tumultuous time. I think the Republican Party is in itself trying to figure out where exactly it's headed. So the story is yet to be told.
You broke with your party over January 6th, as did the vice president, in favor of his daughter. How do you consider that now? How will that be considered by history?
I did what I thought was right. I had friends up on the Hill who were terrified and who were basically concerned about their life. And so I made a statement. I think the statement stands and speaks for itself. And we go on from there.
And you find
the president has come back. He's governing in a new way. And so there's a new chapter.
I want to bring in our panel is back with us. And Jamie Gangel, I mean, you interviewed Dick Cheney repeatedly in your career. And you actually asked him in 2015 how he would like to be remembered. I want to watch a little bit of what he said in the answer to that question. Take a look.
Looking back at your career, how would you like to be remembered?
Well, as somebody who didn't spend a lot of time worried about his public standing, I guess. The fact is that I've had a wonderful career. I loved every minute of it. I've worked with some fantastic people and been able to participate in historic events.
I feel confident that he will be remembered as a man of tremendous courage and someone who did what he knew was right, even when it was tough and even when people were criticizing him for it. And we love him for that.
Jamie, your reflections as we sit with the secretary, too.
So there's no question we know that he will be remembered as probably the most powerful vice president in history, certainly controversial, a lightning rod for critics because of his support for the Iraq War, enhanced interrogation. But I think that interview is just interesting. First of all, Donald Trump was not president yet. Liz Cheney was not a member of Congress yet. But there's something very prescient about both of their answers because there's a whole generation that only knows Dick Cheney as Liz Cheney's father. And I spoke to Liz Cheney several times in the last couple of weeks, and she hopes that part of her father's legacy will be the most recent years. She says that the way he raised her gave her, as she said, the courage of her convictions, and that his standing up to Donald Trump showed that he picked country over party.
Country over party, but of course he also, when he was vice president, it's interesting you mentioned that this generational shift. If we flash back to 2008, Cheney was, often, I think the comparison was Darth Vader, right? Which was something that he was willing to joke about.
He was quite proud of.
Yeah, let's watch it because he had a sense of humor about it.
I have been given the, I suppose, the reputation and the image of someone who keeps secrets, who is a Darth Vader. I asked Lynn the other day how she felt about me being called Darth Vader, and she said, well, it humanizes you.
What do you think that says about him, Madam Secretary?
He kept America safe. Let's remember that. From 2001, September 11th, 2001, until they left on January 20th, President Bush and Vice President Cheney kept our country safe. And that's quite a legacy.
Yeah, look, there's obviously incredibly controversial individual, but, a great patriot in his service to our nation from young age till most recently, was always in the arena kind of mixing it up in the Teddy Roosevelt sense. But I think the most important thing that he did, as the Secretary said, is with President Bush in a very tough time in America, it kept our country safe from another attack on the homeland. And that in and of itself is to be commended because I don't know if people remember, I'm sure many of this around this table do, what it felt like to be in this town or anywhere in America on September 12th.
Yep.
Dick Cheney and And George Bush kept that from happening again for a long, long time. So they're commended for that.
As someone who was based in Iraq for many, many years, the one thing that I think also needs to be said is that it was also Dick Cheney who and George W. Bush misled the American people into war in Iraq.
That's the controversial part, right?
And hundreds of thousands of Iraqis died. And let us not forget that in both Afghanistan and Iraq, there were at least 6,000 to 7,000 U.S. soldiers who died. And so part of his legacy, of course, is many of the things you've said, but the stain of that is something we're still living with today.
Can I say one thing? I'm not going to have a policy debate about Dick Cheney's legacy. I will do that another day. But in a world where we just had a vice president run for president and not win, even people I don't agree with, I try and learn lessons from them. And there is a lesson about how you exude power that Dick Cheney, a lot of people could actually learn. And I think, Madam Secretary, to your point about not needing to be in the forefront, not needing to be the center of attention, but still having power behind closed doors is something some people in D.C. can learn a little more about.
All right, Elaine Chao, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate
Thanks for
your
having
time.
me.
All right, thanks to our panel as well. Coming up next, our Harry Enton breaks down how today's election could signal who is going to take control of the House next year. All right, we're just minutes away from the first exit poll results of Election Day. Tonight's races should give us some signs of how the country views President Trump and the Republicans that control both chambers of Congress right now. Harry Enton joins us now to break some of this down. Harry, what do you think that we're going to learn from tonight about next year's midterms when, in particular, the House is going to be up for grabs?
Yeah, you know me. I'm a big student of history, and so we can go back since 1989 and find out what these different results, New Jersey governor, Virginia governor, New York City mayor, who wins that race? Do they go on and actually win the House the next year? You see it on your screen right there. You see in the governors, 7 out of 9 for both Virginia and New Jersey in terms of the winning party winning the House the next year. New York City mayor is 6 of 9, so pretty decent. But when you combine all three, okay, if, let's say, the Democrats are able to win in New Jersey, are able to win in Virginia, and are able to win in New York City, what does that tell us? If you go all the way back since FDR, you find 5 out of 5 times the Democrats went on to win the House the next year.
There you go. All right. So, Harry, the other thing we want to dig into, you have something extremely fun. I'm actually really excited about this. I'm going to be sitting on our main set, but I'm hoping to FaceTime. I'm told I'm supposed to FaceTime you.
Oh,
what are you doing?
You gave it away. Yes, we're going to have special guests. So it's me and a bunch of friends, Charlemagne the God, Ben Shapiro, and a host of folks on the left and the right. Me right there as your nonpartisan guy in the middle of the screen there. Starting at 8:30, we're going to be doing sort of a Manning cast. All the folks on the screen are going to join me on the couch. We have a foosball table. We've got a pinball machine. And we're going to be discussing the results and tell you what they actually mean. And, of course, I will make sure to keep everybody up to date on the latest election results. But I just think it's going to be a fun time, a different way to watch the results, especially in this day and age in which we have multiple screens.
Sounds like a great hangout. We'll be watching. Harry Enton, thank you very much.
You.
And, of course, we're going to have all the live results and analysis throughout the night right here on CNN. I'm going to be here throughout the night alongside Dana Bash, our coverage anchored by Aaron Burnett and Jake Tapper, starting right now.